Around 16 months ago, I created a game document for a simple idea, which I called at the time, Desktop City Builder. Little did I know, this would be the start of a year-long journey that challenged me in ways I could have never imagined as a game developer. We've had so many struggles, issues, and setbacks, but now I'm here to take you through the entire journey, from the initial concept and many iterations to one of the worst burnouts I've ever experienced. This is the story of our upcoming game, Desktropolis. Back in early 2024, I came across this awesome tutorial from CodeMonkey on how to make a transparent Unity app. This is basically what games like Rusty's Retirement do to make it appear like the application's floating on your desktop. After watching the video, I came up with so many different ideas that I knew I had to start prototyping immediately. Now, I've always loved city builder games, and thankfully from what I've heard and researched, the Steam audience does also. But there's one major problem. City builders are incredibly ambitious games to make. Basically, if we wanted to make a realistic simulation game like Cities Skylines, we'd need like 50 developers and tens of millions of dollars. Of course, something of that scale isn't feasible for a small studio, so figuring out a manageable scope was my first big challenge. The original game document I made for Desktropolis was heavily focused around resources and management. You had to properly supply your buildings with things like water, energy, and waste, kind of like every other city builder game, but I found out quickly this wasn't the right direction. You'd think if you're making a city builder game, you need all these complex systems and resources to manage, but with desktop games, more doesn't necessarily mean better. Even though I really wanted to come up with some new and revolutionary gameplay loop for a city builder game, I decided to try approaching the design from a different perspective. I ended up spending a lot of time looking at the most successful desktop games to figure out exactly why they did so well. The one thing I discovered, which completely changed my mentality, was that all of the top-selling games in this genre never demand your attention, and that's for a reason. The audience for desktop games have a completely different set of expectations. They aren't looking for experiences that force them to actively play or engage with the game. While this might sound counterintuitive from how games are typically designed, the reality is, desktop games are typically enjoyed most while playing idle. So with this understanding, I decided to simplify the concept as much as possible while still keeping a strong emphasis on optimization and replayability. At this point, I figured it was best to completely abandon the original game design document. Even though that meant wasting dozens of hours of work and theory crafting, I knew I had to start fresh in order to create a fully cohesive idle experience. I started throwing a bunch of notes and ideas down in a Word document and eventually came up with this: 4 different categories of buildings for players to specialize their city using any combination they want. While this might not seem like much, this simple foundation was exactly what I needed for inspiration. I wanted to make sure these 4 specialties not only had distinct playstyles with unique buildings, but also gave players the opportunity to explore different combinations and layouts. Because of this, I made a prototype which allowed players to easily purchase, move, and sell buildings at any time. No need for creating infrastructure, roads, or utility buildings, just purchase a building and place it exactly where you want. Removing all those typical restrictions and limitations in city builders ended up being surprisingly fun and exactly what the game needed. Now, around 9 months ago, just after launching Putler, which ended up going pretty well, this is what the current prototype looked like. It was completely bare bones with only the core things I needed for testing. Even though it was still very early in development and the UI looked like this, I decided to share the concept publicly to see what people thought. It's really important to get early validation before investing a lot of time into a game, so I wanted to make sure I didn't make that mistake. So, what did people think of the reveal? Well, the initial reception was way better than I was expecting. I was a bit concerned since I only made physics-based games before, so this was definitely a huge change for us. Just for comparison, it took my previous game Putler around a month to get 400 wishlists, but with Desktropolis, it got 376 just after 1 day alone. I was pretty blown away by this considering I didn't make a trailer before launching the store page, but it ended up being the validation we needed to really take this project more seriously. With this new confidence, I ended up spending the next 5 months working heavily on the gameplay loop, progression, and replay value. After countless hours of iterations, testing, and tweaking numbers on spreadsheets, I was finally confident enough to start getting playtesters for feedback. It's one thing for people to find a concept appealing, but it's another thing to make sure they actually enjoy playing it as well. So was all this time and effort making iterations and changes worth it? Well, that's something I was about to find out very soon. I reached out to my Discord server looking for playtesters and got over 100 signups. This was way more than we needed at the time, so I decided to start with a smaller group from a variety of casual to experienced gamers. When it comes to playtesting, it's completely normal to see players lose interest in the first 30 to 60 minutes, but with Desktropolis, every single person ended up playing for well over 200 plus minutes. Even though a lot of features weren't in the game yet and things were still really unpolished, the playtest had an average time played of roughly 54 hours. I playtested the game for well over 1,000 hours myself, so I can't express just how much this was a relief to see. It's easy to be biased about the things you make as a developer, so this gave me a lot of confidence knowing things were headed in the right direction. But just as everything was going great, something finally caught up to me. It seemed every day my sleep schedule got worse, I stopped eating well and taking care of myself, and I was hardly spending time with my friends and family anymore. I got so obsessed with this project and game development that I pushed my personal life aside, and that lack of balance ended up affecting my motivation drastically. Because of this, I decided to take a few days off to focus on myself, but that short break ended up turning into 2 full months with hardly any progress made. This was officially the worst burnout I've ever experienced in my life. I couldn't get myself to do anything, and the longer the break went on for, the more difficult it was to get back into the swing of things. I really wanted to work on my game, but every time I opened Unity, I just sat there staring at my screen waiting for something to happen. I'm not really sure what helped me overcome this burnout, but one morning I randomly woke up feeling completely refreshed. Maybe I just needed a long break or mental reset, but it made me realize I need to take care of myself to make sure this never happens again. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me when Desktropolis is releasing, but with all the work and polish that still needs to be done, it's a bit hard to say. Even though it's awesome seeing people excited to play our games, I'm never gonna give ourselves artificial deadlines or rush out an unfinished product. We're currently working towards a demo so you can try it yourself for free, but if you want to help us during development to make sure it's the best it can be for release, join our Discord and keep an eye out for the next playtest announcement. Anyways, if you're interested in Desktropolis and want to support us, make sure to give it a wishlist on Steam. Also, if you have any questions about the game, feedback, or suggestions, make sure to leave a comment. My name's Max Anderson. Thanks for watching, and see you beans in the next video.